Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.
Welcome to our first podcast, video cast.
Yeah,
you and I have never
good.
done video before. So Mark Carpenter, the legend,
Hello.
head brewer for Anchor Brewing for 45 years and a Petaluma resident. So we'll talk a little bit about like Petaluma as well too. And I'm so excited. I'm so honored that you said yes to doing the first show.
How can I turn you down? You've always been so nice to me.
Well, you're always like...
Does the podcast have a name?
Not yet.
So we'll come up with
we'll have to
something.
come up with something, so you guys can help us too. So,
By the way, when you introduce me, you always say head brewer for 45 years, and it's so nice of you, but no, I was not head brewer.
Well, Fritz was
45.
brewmaster, right?
Correct. I started out at the bottom of the rungs. There were only three of us, but we did start out brewing because when we brewed, we all brewed, and when we bottled, we all bottled. It was just
all hands on deck.
Yeah, and it was a great way to learn brewing and to grow up in that atmosphere. And I did wind up as head brewer, and that was great. But from 0 to 45 years isn't exactly a rocket ship. But
Well, when you started with Anchor, you actually hadn't gone to brewing school or anything like that yet?
No.
You just went for a job. This was 1971, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
And
and Fritz Maytag from Maytag Cheese and Maytag Appliance family, he had just basically
he bought it in
saved
1965.
Anchor. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anchor.
He bought it in 1965 and it was on the verge of going out of business. Mm-hmm. And there was a man, Fred Koo, who owned the old spaghetti factory in San Francisco.
Mm-hmm.
And Fred always had Anchor Steam on draft, the only beer he had on draft. And he liked the idea of Anchor Steam because it had a real history. And it was unique to California and unique to San Francisco. And so he really liked its history. And when it was going out of business, he said to Fritz, who was a student at Stanford at the time, he said, you ought to go by Anchor Brewing and check it out just to see it. And I don't know. I haven't
see
talked
it before
to Fred
it closed,
about it.
right? Yeah.
Correct. Just see it before it closes because it's going to close. And I don't think Fred intended Fritz would buy it. It was just, but you never know. I haven't talked to him about it. But Fritz wound up visiting it, and like many people who visit breweries, they're just kind of magical places, I mean,
I appreciate them.
and especially the old Anchor Brewery. We were at this tiny location on 8th Street, and it just had this magical feel about it, and this kind of very unique little tap room. And so Fritz did buy it, but as he always says, he bought it for less than you'd pay for a car because it wasn't buying anything. It didn't have much.
So Anchor started in the 1800s, 1850.
The brewery
I feel like remember
puts 1896 on
but
the
it's
label.
before that. It was closer
it was,
to the
if you read Dave's
49ers and the Gold Rush.
Yeah,
right?
if you read Dave's history.
Yeah. Dave Burke, that's a great book to get.
Yeah, Dave Burkhart.
Sorry.
Yeah, and he traces it back to the long before that, in the same location. It changed names a couple times, but it was in 1896 it became Anchor.
Okay.
And so that's the date that Fritz always put on the label. And so it was around forever, and then it survived Prohibition, which no one really knows how it survived Prohibition.
I've always wondered.
I think it made beer. I mean, I had one small evidence of that, but many of the breweries around the country, they had refrigeration, most of them, so they started making ice cream or things that
like
you need
malt extracts,
malt
syrups
extract
and things like that. Yeah.
But Anchor didn't have refrigeration; that wasn't part of the process, and so they could have just shut it down, I guess, let the equipment sit there. But you're tying up a workspace for a long time. Look how long Prohibition went on.
And I wonder, like California in general, I mean, even now, it's kind of funny because the ABC is pretty strict in California, but not as strict, like alcohol and beverage control, but not as strict as like North Carolina or Utah. But San Francisco was kind of wild back then.
Oh, yeah.
And like, I mean, the guys were like, Mickey Hart told me like one time that like in the 60s, the Grateful Dead, they were like just like running the wilds of Marin on their horses.
Yeah.
And, so I can imagine in like the 1920s or,
Yeah. Plus that the people weren't pro-prohibition.
Right.
Most people were negative. Look, if you think there were a lot of Irish cops, well, they weren't for
They weren't, yeah.
And the whole Italian community wasn't for prohibition.
Yeah.
And the German community wasn't for prohibition. So I think that if things went on and everybody just kind of ignored it,
Right. Yeah, people in Europe always are like, you guys did this crazy prohibition.
But they did it in Europe also.
Yeah, only in...
I think Sweden for sure.
I think Sweden did. And what's funny is that in Petaluma, which is where we're filming right now, there is the Temperance water fountain.
The WCTU water fountain.
And I always go by that. I always look at that and I'm like...
Yeah.
Yeah, you could only shoot beer now.
But no man want for a drink.
Yeah. Yeah, and then at Meantime Brewery, they have the wall with the signs with protesting. We want beer.
Yeah,
we want beer. So luckily Fritz.
Yeah, beer's an amazing thing.
Well, right now we're drinking the Anchor Steam flagship beer and nice cold fresh.
Yeah, it's very nice and fresh. It actually has a date of production date of 4/12. So it's nice and fresh, and it tastes just great.
Yeah, it's really good.
Pardon me, it's a great beer.
Well, I want to explain to people
and a bargain compared to a lot of breweries.
I can't even believe how much a 4-pack. It's not even 6-packs like for most craft breweries anymore. But and then again, also I know that their ingredients have gone way up. But it's kind of this catch-22. So the Anchor is a great deal. So you were when you were talking about during Prohibition, so Anchor didn't have refrigeration because of the California Common Style
process,
steam beer.
Steam.
Explain that process to the layman.
Well, the way steam beer is made is kind of in the old English tradition because the traditional English breweries really didn't have refrigeration.
Well, it's always cold there. They had natural refrigeration.
They refrigerate the whole country. Yes. Right. And so I guess the short answer is that San Francisco is always refrigerated. And that's why at the start of the gold rush, a lot of brewers came out here. They wanted to make beer, but they couldn't make real lager beer right away. And so they used kind of English ale methods and German lager methods combined. And they could do that throughout the state in the wintertime, but as soon as summertime, they really couldn't brew any longer. It got too warm for fermentation. But San Francisco didn't. And so you could ferment in San Francisco year-round. And so steam beer survived in San Francisco. As soon as they had refrigeration and ice houses, then they started making lager beer. And steam beer kind of went away, with the exception of San Francisco. Now,
it has its own yeast, right?
Yeah, it's a lager yeast. Mm-hmm. And over the years, since I was there, we've used a number of different yeasts. We kind of settled in on one old Wallerstein Laboratories lager style that we use.
Okay. And then when you go into the Anchor Brewery, which is absolutely beautiful, they have the famous copper kettles.
Yep.
But when you go where they're actually doing the steam beer,
yes.
and it's all bubbling up, which is
open fermenters, very shallow open fermenters.
Yeah. So are those technically cool ships?
Yeah, well, they're the same design as a cool ship. Mm-hmm. And so that's what those early brewers did. A cool ship is a shallow open vessel that they would pump the hot wort into.
Mm-hmm. And that would cool it.
It would cool it overnight. Mm-hmm. An easy way, simple way to cool it overnight. And then they could add yeast the next day. But then they would, they use cool ships throughout Europe, actually.
Right, I've seen a bunch in
But
Germany,
then they would transfer the cooled wort to usually some other shaped vessel, a barrel or a big tank, but in the case of steam beer, they just left it in a cool ship style vessel because that way it would dissipate the heat that generated by fermentation. And that's the way we still do it.
Yeah.
like I say, and it works in San Francisco.
Yeah, you can when you go and do a fantastic tour. I love going there. I mean, I've been there many times. I never get tired of it. And you can see the different stages. It's like
the active
very
fermentation.
active
That's the beauty of an open fermenter, whether it's shallow or not. All that activity you see going on.
Yeah, because beer is living.
Yeah,
it's alive. Yeah. I like it, and it's fortifying with that activity. It's kind of just how it feels.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's so much history with Anchor, and I think it's just like revered around the world. And you and I have both done a lot of traveling, and we've had a lot of people come and visit from all over the world as well. So, like our Polish friends, which, for example, when the first place they want to see, I mean, I've always, of course they want to see Russian River Brewing, but they want to go to Anchor.
Yeah.
And so my Lithuanian friends, my Soviet friends, and and they were under, like some Soviet, communist rule for a while.
Yeah.
And they tell me that Anchor was one of the first beers that they were able to get, whether contraband or legally later, that they put in the first American beers that they had, and it really stuck in their heads, and they got a sip of their father's beers, or some of these younger guys, and so they've always been really excited to meet you and to go to Anchor, and I think it's really the legacy of Anchor is something that we like. I really want to help preserve it. I'm obviously, I know you do as well, and Dave Burkhart's book about Anchor, as well too. But there's been, some news. That Anchor is going to only distribute it in California now, and they're changing the Christmas ale. And I haven't had a chance to talk to anybody from there yet. I've only seen the news articles, and I'd heard the rumors first. I don't know if you've talked to anybody yet. And,
no.
And maybe I'll be able to get somebody official, on the show, soon. But the Christmas ale, I mean, how long, tell us the story of the Christmas ale. Supposedly you're only going to be able to get it at the brewery now. Some people think it's going completely away, but what I've heard is that it's still going to be available only at the brewery.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Good. That's good news. I have not talked to anybody at the brewery either, and I should get in there and see what's up.
I wonder if it could be like Pliny the Younger, where everybody can only go to the brewery and get it. And maybe that could kind of be a good thing. I mean,
it'd be a great thing.
You could do a pilgrimage to get, you do Christmas parties.
Fritz Maytag was such an amazing guy and so creative.
And your dog's licking me.
And he was just such a creative man. And he created all these different beers we made before there were any other microbreweries. I mean, we were it. And so... we only sold in the Bay Area. And the only reason we left the Bay Area to expand to Southern California or to other states was because as we grew, we were able to make more beer than we were selling locally. And in those days, we were the only game in town. So we had distributors coming to us from out of state. They would say, could we get some of your beer? And so Fritz, if he met a distributor and really liked the guy and agreed to refrigerate our beer and to all his standards.
Be a good steward of the beer.
Then we would start selling beer to that location.
Okay.
But then we wound up growing to be national,
And then international.
Yeah. But as we grew to be national, our local market really grew. And there was a time when we talked about to just stop growing outside the state because we had plenty of business here. When I started at Anchor, you couldn't find our beer in any restaurants in San Francisco, and then it got to the point where if it wasn't in a restaurant, you were shocked, So hopefully we'll get back to that kind of a situation. It could be good for Anchor, I think.
Yeah, actually, now that I'm looking at it like this way.
Well, there's just, look, every city has 20 breweries.
Right.
Even a small town has many breweries. And so all the local bars want to buy their beer, and they want to buy the newest beer that's on the market, and so there's not much a demand for out of town beers in general.
Right.
I think Lagunitas is seeing that now, and I don't know about Sierra, but I would bet they are seeing that.
Yeah.
And so it certainly hit Anchor, and so it could be a good thing. As long as the owners keep brewing beer in San Francisco in the traditional steam beer fermenters, I'm happy. And hopefully they'll get to a level where they're making money and running a business that they're happy with in those circumstances.
There's a lot of good people working there that I would love to see keep their jobs, keep making the beer. They like. There's this young guy there that I was talking about. He was actually, we were in the experimental brewery with the Polish guys, with the Polish brewers, and he was over to the side and he'd gotten off work and he was reading a book on beer, a research book, and he'd gotten it from the library. So Fritz Maytag's old office is now this library, and the employees can check out books on beer. And some of them are really old. I was like looking through them. It was really cool books.
Quite a collection. And Fritz sold it with the brewery.
Yeah, so they can check it out. It has like a little library card and everything. And so he was. I was like, "What are you reading?" And he goes, "I just love this. I just get research and I learn more." And he just did their Mexican lager that they just did. I think his name is Pedro, but he was so passionate about beer and the history and the science and they made that really possible. So I encourage people to keep buying the beer, keep asking your local bars and restaurants to you want the Anchor, because you've got good people who are really passionate there. And it's history. It's a legend, and we have to take care of our legacies.
And it's not so easy to find here in Sonoma. Fortunately, I found this at Petaluma Market this morning.
Okay, cool.
So that was good, but some of our biggest retailers don't carry it any longer. So hopefully, if they concentrate on California, then their sales crew will get out there and reestablish some of this stuff.
Done well for Russian River, so that would actually kind of make sense then.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about it in that way. I was thinking of it as limiting, but really it's exclusivity.
Yeah.
So, and you'll just get it super fresh too.
Exactly.
Although I think they should still sell in places like Poland and Lithuania and Finland, because those guys, like the international folks, they all know Anchor Steam.
Yeah.
They all know who you are. They my friend Archer, Naparowski, when you and your wife came to Poland to come see the horses and do some touring, and he's a historical tour guide as well as a beer judge with me, and I judge the Polish National Beer Competition every year. And he told me he got tears in his eyes when he got to meet you. And, your wife's like, oh, God, I have to wash his underwear. It's like, he's not that big a deal. But it was the legacy that, and especially for a country
it's the same way I felt when I started traveling and going to some of the most famous breweries in Germany, probably
like Prague
Belgium,
too,
in England. I mean, it's just a great industry, and it's so great to meet those people.
Well, so speaking of traveling, when you came to work with Fritz at Anchor, this is always really fascinating to me.
Yeah.
You and Fritz went traveling to England.
Well, first of all, yes, Fritz went on his own and with this other guy at the brewery before I started getting involved in those trips. Okay. But I eventually got involved in those trips, yes. And those were great trips.
So where did you go? Where are some of the places you went?
The first trip was probably to England because we were always trying to discover new ales or new methods, And in those days, it was hard to find real ale in England because most of the real ale breweries had gone out of business.
That was before Camera, the campaign for real ale
when Camera was getting started, yes. And so they, and then it's like the point now, there's many, just like here, real ale breweries. And then we started going to Germany because we wanted to make a light beer. Fritz always wanted to make it, and not light like calorie wise, but light in character, like a Helles lager. And so we traveled around Germany looking at their beers, trying to find one. Fritz didn't want to make just a lager, so we found wheat beer, and there were no wheat beers in the U.S. at that time.
Way before the Hefeweizen made its big.
And so we decided to make a wheat beer. And so we went to Germany to learn about wheat beers, and then went to Belgium to learn about their beers. But so there were a lot of trips to Germany as we were growing. We had to get equipment.
Yeah, I was going to say the equipment.
So we were always over there looking at the different brewing shows to find good equipment.
So like back then, like now we can find equipment, much easier in California and America. But like I remember hearing Jack McAuliffe, who started the first new brewery in America after Prohibition.
Yeah.
And it was right here in Sonoma County in in the town of Sonoma. Most people don't know that was like 1986, I think.
Something.
86, I believe it was 86. And he took dairy equipment and some Coca-Cola equipment and welded. And he was a Navy guy, so like I know you had to know how to weld and all that stuff too. You make like our really cool stuff, but it's like he welded some dairy equipment, turned it into brewing stuff.
He pretty much built all his own equipment.
Yeah. And now, like, now you can get it from China too, but the best equipment still probably is from Germany, right?
I think so. I haven't been into that area for a while now, but yeah, I think there's a lot of Chinese equipment on the market that's getting better, mainly tanks.
Yeah.
Because they're fairly simple to make. Stainless steel made into a round thing and welded. But I think still fillers, can fillers, bottle fillers, are Germany or Italy.
Well, the canning, like a lot of our craft breweries here, like at the start of the pandemic, were like really only doing like draft.
Yeah.
And then the pandemic hit, and then they were like the ones who were doing canning, it really helped them. And then they were able to brewers were sharing canning equipment with each other, like helping each other, which is one of the great things about the brewing industry. So like I remember that you told a story about like Anchor had the ability to buy malt and hops in bigger quantity because when they were bigger, and then there'd be like smaller breweries at the time, like Sierra Nevada, and some of these other smaller breweries would come and get like malt or hops from you guys.
Actually, when that happened because there was the nitrosamine scare. That all of a sudden they realized there was nitrosamines, and they were in bread, and they were in this, and they were in that, and it could cause cancer, and they were in beer, and it had to do with the way the malt was dried at the maltsters, and Fritz was really worried that all of a sudden they would test, because I'm sure they were out there testing various beers, but we were so tiny. But he was always worried they would test our steam beer or our old foghorn because
the barley wine.
Barley wine, because it has like 4 times the malt.
Yeah.
And so it's going to have 4 times the nitrosamines, And at that time, the only brewery that was using nitrosamine-free malt was Coors.
Oh.
And it had to do, as I said, with how they dried the malt during the malting process.
It was like the heat, like causing carcinogens, or
but what it was with the exception of Coors, they had big burners going, like in your furnace, and then that heat would rise and go through the malt. They were in these perforated beds, and then that heat would go and dry the malt. But the malt then was in contact with the burned, the direct flame and the chemicals in the exhaust of that. What Coors did, they had a heat source, and then they heated air across that heat source, and then sent that air through the malt. So there was no nitrosamines because it wasn't.
It was almost like filtered.
So these guys had to figure out a way to get the nitrosamines out of the malt, and so Fritz contacted Coors and said, "Would you sell us malt?" And on a temporary basis till these guys figure it out, and Coors agreed to it, and so we got train cars of Coors malt at our brewery.
Was that for a while you couldn't get Coors over the Rockies? Remember? Was that
Coors was already in California, but that had nothing to do with Coors selling in California because they made the malt, but they had to ship it to us, and they shipped it in rail cars, and that's when we were in the new brewery, and we actually had a rail spur, whatever they call those, behind the brewery. Because when it was the coffee plant, it was a coffee plant before it was a brewery, they would bring in the coffee from the ships in these rail cars. There was the San Francisco Belt Railway, little tiny railway.
How cool.
It really was pretty cool. And so we get these rail cars of Coors malt, and then we did sell to McAuliffe and I think to Sierra. But it was only a short time until these guys figured out how to stop. And the way they figured out how to stop it, all they did was burn sulfur. They put sulfur gas in the exhaust, and that changed the chemistry of the exhaust. And so I think nowadays everyone's gone to indirect heating. But in the short term, they solved the problem by burning sulfur.
Is that like creosote, kind of like that creosote?
What's it? I don't know.
Creosote is like a byproduct of like with when you burn stuff. So
maybe I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. That's very interesting. Well, but that's like so. Brewers have been helping other brewers for a long time.
Correct. Yeah, and when we were starting up, we could go to big brewers anytime, and they were usually very helpful to us because they thought. One side of it, they thought we were kind of a joke. There were 4, when I started with Anchor, there were 4 brewers in San Francisco. There was Anchor, there was Lucky Lager, there was Burgermeister, and...
Acme? No.
No, Acme was gone. Anyway, there were 4. Okay. Take my word for it. And they were all pretty big brewers. Hams was the other one.
Okay.
And
Hams was in San Francisco?
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
okay.
they had a big building with this giant glass. It was all lighted with lights. It looked like it was filling with beer, and then the foam would come. Anyway.
And they're all gone except for Anchor.
Yeah, and see, these guys used to think we're a joke, and they're the ones that are gone. It's changing world, so you never know.
Well, Fritz had a way of, he was progressive.
Yes.
He was really like good at looking at like trends and things as well as also classic, like the Breckles Brown Ale.
Yeah.
That was like your recipe. Like that was an honor of the Mr. Breckles. That
horrible name.
Yeah, I loved that.
The beer was fabulous.
I
think that name killed it. I'm convinced of that.
Do you think so?
I do. It was just kind of a weird name. I think if they had just given it and I don't know for sure, but I think if they'd just given it a fanciful name like, I don't know what, Anchor Ale or something, just any name, like look at...
like Anchor Rich Ale or something.
Or just look at all the names of the beers at Hen House.
That's true. Oh, yeah, the conspiracy theory.
Mattress Mafia, If they had done that instead of Breckles Brown...
Colin from Hen House wants to come and do this one day with us also. Like if you'd want to come and do this again, that'd be
Let me know. I probably would. His Oyster Stout, I think, is one of the best beers on the market today. That's a I think it's just a fabulous beer.
Yeah, that is a really, really great beer. Yeah, their conspiracy theory is always like cracks me up. The Walrus is Paul. Yeah. Of course, Beatles fan.
Right.
Like, and then the cans of their artwork and everything as well. So that's actually one of a Petaluma brewery. We've got Lagunitas here in Petaluma. What do we got over here now? We've got some cider. What other breweries over here in Petaluma now? Why am I blanking? Yeah, well, there was Dempsey's, and Dempsey's was the oldest one in Sonoma County, and then Peter, sold
retired.
And then it closed. Yeah, that was a bummer.
Well, it's too bad that COVID came along right after he sold it because it put that guy under.
I know. And then our Bear Republic just sold.
You've got Seismic and the other one that I like so much is Old Possum.
Old Possum, yeah, we love them, and also Old Kaz.
Old Kaz is good. Yeah,
that's a good one. And those guys are hilarious.
Yeah,
like, I'll definitely get them on the show as well. They've got a great story too. The underwater gold mining, welding, and stuff that Brian was doing. Those guys are hilarious. So back to travel though too. So you did some recent travel. Like you and your wife always go to places that.
Yeah,
most people don't go to, and
my wife pushes me to travel. I got plenty of travel with the brewery, so I wasn't so keen to go off. I really got a chance to kind of live in England for a number of weeks at a time, cool. We had to start selling our beer in England because there was a company there that was stealing our name, and you can't sue anybody to stop stealing your name if you're not selling in their market. And so
I didn't know this.
Yeah. So we got our beer going there. And then I would go there for a couple weeks and hang out and try to get the beer going, Meanwhile, we won the lawsuit. We did great.
Yeah.
And we actually had I don't know what the sales are like now, but we had a real good market in England for a while.
Yeah.
And the rest of Europe, we actually started in the rest of Europe and then wound up in England. But to get back to travel. So my wife was always pushing me to travel and as I was getting closer to retirement, she would want to travel. And I forget the first, and we had been to Western Europe, and we didn't have a desire to go to a lot of the places in the world that people normally go. And
stand in line.
I forget which one of us suggested it, but we wound up going on a trip to Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia.
Estonia.
Yeah.
And the famous Estonia yeast. Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And then so as part of that, we started that trip in Finland, and then took a train to St. Petersburg, and then a train supposed to take us to Lithuania. We actually got arrested on the Russian border.
What? You and your wife did?
Yeah, we did. I've told you that story.
No, I didn't know you got arrested.
It was really kind of funny because we what they got us for is our visa was 2 hours expired. We crossed the border at 2 a.m. and it expired at midnight. They actually pulled us off this train, and it was really out in the middle of nowhere. And it was. I wish I could have filmed it because it was like out of a World War II movie. With there was no train platform, so they had to put ladders up so we could climb out. And then there's all these soldiers there with guns looking under with flashlights, for smugglers. And so they take us, and my wife was really worried. And I said to her, don't worry. It's not about the destination. It's about the journey. And I said, what do they want with a couple of old people? And so they take us over to this little shack. And this woman, there was a woman in this shack who had to deal with us. And she spoke French and she spoke Russian, obviously, but she really didn't speak English. So Betsy speaks a tiny bit of French. And so she had to deal with us. And she had to fingerprint us, and she had to go through all this thing. But she could not have been nicer.
Oh, that's good.
She kept saying to us, would you like something to eat, or would you like some tea? And we said, no, we're okay. Well, then after she fingerprinted us, the room was about this size that we were in. And then there was another little room off, that was her kitchen. Uh-huh. And she had these giant computers. I've never seen such big computers.
Mainframes,
real
mainframes. Oh boy!
That she got her information typed into. Anyway, after she fingerprinted us, she took us into the kitchen there so we could wash our hands. And on the table was a little cake and some dried fish. And I think that's what she was offering us. It was her lunch,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, she couldn't have been nicer. And then she said to us, well, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay here till tomorrow night at 2?
You're still in Russia, right?
We're still in Russia.
Oh boy!
And she says, now we can fix it so you can stay here and get the train tomorrow night, or you can we can go to the border. I said, well, maybe we'll stay here. Is there a hotel? Oh no, there's no hotel. I said, what about a restaurant? No, there's no restaurant. So I said, okay, you better get us to the border. And she got us back our train ticket money. So that paid for all the fines and everything. And she got a guy to drive us to the border, and we had to walk across the border. And there was a Latvian border, actually, we crossed into.
Okay.
And then we got a bus to Riga, and then another bus to Lithuania, to Vilnius.
Vilnius. Isn't Vilnius beautiful?
Yeah. So anyway, that's my story of being arrested in Russia. And I signed all kinds of papers in Russia, and I never understood what I was signing. So I don't know if I could go back or not.
Well, I'm sure they asked you what your occupation was, and then,
Yeah, they didn't care.
Yeah.
Or she didn't care.
Yeah,
she may not have known what
a brewer was.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, okay, so I've actually so I judge beer in Finland now, Lasati, the old Viking
Finland's
style.
Great, isn't it?
Finland is one of my favorite countries now. Probably the most equitable country in the world. Everything is
That's where we started that trip, and I've been back many times since, actually for the brewery a couple times. But yeah, it's such a small town.
And in the rest of the country, the people there they're really. It's funny. The Finns have a reputation of having a real straight face and no sense of. Oh no, I think they're hilarious.
Yeah,
and they can party too. They know.
They got all winter.
Yeah, so they're indoor. They're outdoors year round.
Yeah.
They only have 4 hours of sunlight in the winter, and they only have 4 hours of darkness in the summer. But they make the most of every bit of outdoors, like, the saunas and the jumping in the cold lake and, all of that. I'm going back in August to judge the sake company. You should come.
Oh, that's cool.
If you want to judge the Viking beer, let me know.
I don't know. It's a nice offer.
It's pretty cool. It's a very interesting. It's the oldest beer style still being made commercially in the world.
It's really good that that style is kind of revived. That it's going well enough to have a competition.
Yeah. My friend Pekka, he kind of kept that going, and all the villages in Finland. So, like the counties, like they're not. I can't remember what they're called, but they're basically like counties. Every county has a competition among their home brewers. And then the beer that wins that county goes on to this national competition, which is what I'm going to be judging. And they move it from a different county every time. And the requirements are that it has to have a sauna, or like a lot of saunas, and a cold, like a night, well, that's all cold, and a lake. Yeah. And that's the only requirement. And it's super fun.
That's great.
I really enjoy it. But you just got back from Uzbekistan.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I know you've gone to Romania, and then you went back to Romania because you met these brewers that were trying to start a brewery.
I stay in touch with. I've been there a few times. I love Romania. I'd recommend to anybody to go, especially northern Romania, because it's like stepping back in time. Wow. It's really something. And it's easy to find beer there. And every little village has a bar, and the farmers all hang out in the bar in the afternoon. And the farmers usually don't speak English, but somebody in the bar does. And so you start talking with everybody, and Romania I just loved it. I just think they're great. And I have a good friend there now. Uzbekistan was really something to see. We went to Georgia and Armenia and Azerbaijan,
yeah.
And so I was just looking what's further away, across the Caspian Sea. And Uzbekistan has these giant monuments that were all built in the early 1400s. And they're really something.
With the tiles you
said. Yes, all tiled.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Huge. I had no idea.
And those pictures, when you see how tiny the people are in the pictures.
Yeah, I'll have to post some pictures to the... Yeah. I'll have our sponsors from LiveX Explorer, Sean and Yavis Payne, will help me put some pictures and things up so that people can see what we're talking about there. So, that's an interesting... I know nothing about Uzbekistan.
Well,
I know a lot about... I know a little about a lot of countries.
Yeah. Well, it's Central Asia, and it is really kind of the crossroads of Central Asia. Mm-hmm. It borders a few other... there's a couple other stands of very close borders. Mm-hmm. And so Tashkent is an unbelievably active city. Mm. And one thing I found surprising, or we get off the plane and we're going to get a taxi to our hotel, and it's Chevrolets everywhere. They're all white and they're all Chevrolets.
How come?
And because they have a factory there. And if you want to buy something other than the Chevrolet, you're going to pay a big tax. So everybody drives a Chevrolet. And there's models there that you don't see here, little tiny vans and stuff, but they're all Chevrolets.
That's so funny.
But people are unbelievably honest and nice. The food is fantastic. I love lamb, and there's lots of great lamb.
Nice. Probably lots of yogurt and things as
well.
Yeah,
great yogurt. And they have a national dish, and it's called plov, P-L-O-V, and it's like a fried rice with some carrots in it, and then meat on top, and it has horse meat and beef and lamb. And in Tashkent, there's a restaurant that sells. They serve. Their whole thing is plov. That's all you get there, and they serve. I don't know. It's somewhere 40,000 people every day. It's like the size of the Petaluma Fairgrounds.
Holy moly!
There's all these different buildings, all these tables, and it's a funny process to get your food. And they have the kitchen where they make it. You can walk right through the kitchen, and they have these look like giant woks that are in held up in a stone
like
thing.
A gas burner kind of thing.
No, it's all wood. So they have piles of wood in the center, and they put the wood under it and burn it, and they make the fried rice, and they're cooking the meat over here, and it's really something to see. and there's people everywhere,
and they're not even tourists though. Like this is just the community that's like eating.
There are locals, yes, but there are tourists. But the tourists are from like the next stand. Like there's Turkestan and
Turkmenistan,
and Kyrgyzstan, and they're close by. So a lot of these people come over to Tashkent because Tashkent's the biggest city in the area, and they go shopping and they go to the Plov Center. And you see all these people in like their native costume from their country. And I don't know if they wear it all the time in their country, but they seem to wear it when they come.
So is that like shows
Tashkent.
This is the region I'm from?
Yes, correct. Yeah, you can.
I like it.
And
it's like a Texan wearing their cowboy hat to California or something.
Yeah, exactly. And there's a lot of Russian tourists because Russia was the owner until 1991. Yeah. And there's a lot of Russians there now, young Russians who have left to avoid the war or starting businesses there. And
I bet, right.
Yeah. And so this place is just packed and the food is great. They bring you your food. We're lucky. We had each city we went to, we'd hire a guide for a day or so. And so, yeah, because to go to the Plov Center on your own, you could get food, no problem. Right. But boy, you'd never figure out the system, you know.
Was it easy to get guides?
Oh, yeah. Well, I did it from here, actually, online.
Okay.
And I found, actually, when I started, I only hired a guide for one day in Tashkent. And because I like to meet the guides before I offered them more days, you know. And she was fantastic. She really helped me out with a lot of stuff. Cool. And before I got there, we were going to travel by train around Uzbekistan. She got me all our tickets, which I tried getting them online. It's virtually impossible. They wouldn't sell them to you because they had some big convention there of local, you know, the Central Asian bankers or something. And
I would never even thought of that, right?
Yeah. And it's high-speed rail. It's a nice rail system. And they have a beautiful subway system.
Like California, we can't get one from Southern California.
Yeah, I know.
Northern California.
I know. So there's many modern things about it, and then many very primitive things, all mixed together. I'd take taxis around Tashkent, and you'd go on a good ride, and it would be way under $1. It would be 70 cents to go.
It cost me $24 to go to Santa Rosa Airport to my house.
Yes.
The other day.
Yes. And so those were really cheap, you know. Yeah. It was really something to see. They have 12,000 psalms to the dollar. So
interesting.
Yeah,
Did they
which
all
is nice
know?
Because it's all paper money. There's no coins because it would be such a tiny amount. You know,
when I'm carrying euros around, my purse starts getting heavy.
Yeah, exactly.
Did they all know about California?
Yes. Yes. Because I always some maybe not, but. When people ask where I'm from, I always like to say California.
Yeah,
actually, I like to say San Francisco.
I say San Francisco usually when I'm traveling. If I just say America these days, since Trump got elected, it was like people are like, and I'm like San Francisco. And in Italy, they're like, I love San Francisco.
Yes, yeah. Well, Uzbekistan, they don't know San Francisco.
Yeah, but they knew probably California.
They know California.
Okay.
Yeah,
very cool.
And they couldn't be more honest. It's really something.
When you did the Riga, Estonia, I find that I love this. So actually, when I went to judge in Finland a couple of years ago, then I did take the ferry over, which is really easy to do from Helsinki. Yeah. You take the ferry over to Tallinn in Estonia. And a lot of people in Finland, because Finland is expensive, I mean, they put their taxes and things to very good use there. But they'll go to Estonia for shopping or get their hair cut and stuff. Yeah. And Tallinn is one of the best preserved medieval cities in the world. I mean, it's like amazing. So fantastic there. And I went to some of my friends' breweries. The only problem with
Tallinn is there's too many people because there's so many tourists.
And I went during COVID.
You were there perfect time.
Yeah, it was a good time.
And Tallinn's a great port. So I have all these cruise ships stopped there.
And there were no cruise ships when I was going.
Yes, but at night, they're all back in their cruise ship.
Yeah.
So Tallinn at night can be pretty pleasant.
We stayed at a monastery for $40 for both of us a night, right in downtown. And then I had a friend who owns, my friend Urma's Roots, they owned what is the name of the brewery? Oh my, I just blanked, but I know Poyala. And then there's his brewery. And then he drove us around and showed us. here's the Soviet blockhouse I grew up in. When the Soviet, because Estonia ended up saying yes to the Russians, so like that if they protected them and they fought with them, that they would become.
Well,
Soviet.
they all did.
Yeah, except for Finland. And Finland said,
Finland didn't, but all three of them did.
Yeah. So, oh boy. So where's your next trip?
I don't know.
What's your favorite beer?
My favorite beer right now my favorite beer is Anchor.
Yeah.
Right now, I'd have to say it's the Oyster Stout from Hen House. But I can also say it's Guinness because we stopped in Ireland for a couple days just to break up our trip.
Leaving there
so
right now.
I had a lot of Guinness. Yeah. That was nice.
I'm supposed to be going to Ireland today.
Yeah.
But my dad and mom are coming out, and I'm doing some stuff with them with the VA and stuff, and so we'll be doing that as well. And you've been in Petaluma for how long?
1982 we moved here.
Yeah, because from San Francisco.
No, from Lagunitas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, my wife, when we got married in 1972, we lived in the city, and she wanted to move to Marin, and I didn't want to move to Marin. Marin was way more expensive than San Francisco. Yeah.
Oh, no. God, it was more expensive than San Francisco back then? Oh, wow.
Yeah. We had a 2-bedroom, 1-bath house for $115 a month at 6th and Clement. So I didn't want to leave that. And so to get her to leave me alone, I said, well, if you can find a house we can buy in Marin. And I figured she'd never find one. And we wound up getting a little tiny house in San Anselmo. Then we moved from there to Lagunitas.
What a trip. Huh.
Yeah.
And then when you had your kids, is that when you moved to Petaluma?
Yeah, well, my daughter was born in Lagunitas, and then and then she was 2 when we moved to Petaluma.
And you've got your horse ranches and stuff out here. And I went to the Real Donor, the Turkish food last night for dinner with my friends who actually are on their way to Ireland right now. And they were like, we didn't even know this was here. I mean, like the thing with like Petaluma is like you can get any kind of food.
Yep.
And like there's nightlife, there's music, there's breweries and beer. It's a pretty cool place.
Real Donor's good.
That was really good because that was you guys took me there. You and your wife took me there.
I like that place.
Are you riding your horses still and stuff?
Yeah, we're going out. We were out last week. We're going out again tomorrow. Unfortunately, the horses are getting older. I got 2 of mine I can't ride, so I'm down to 1 horse right now. And the horse that I do team pinning on, I can't ride. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do about that this year.
Well, there's lots of like really cool spots out here in Petaluma for both country and the downtown. Yeah. It's kind of the best of both worlds.
I love Petaluma. Since we moved here, it's just been great.
Yeah. Sonoma County has been... People always go like, I've been Navy brat, moved around a lot. When I came to Sonoma County, I said, I am not moving anymore. Yeah. Yeah. The only place I would probably, if I was going to live someplace else, well, what would have been Portugal a few years ago, but now everybody and their grandmother's moving to Portugal. Yeah. But I judge there every year still also. And then I'm judging in Singapore in September.
No kidding.
I know. That'll be the first time.
That's fantastic.
And then I'm judging the Sati finish in August. And Portugal in September. So I'm going to get you over maybe some judging one more time with me.
We'll see.
Finland, Sati. That'd be kind of cool.
I wouldn't mind doing that. I like Finland.
Finland's nice. So that's a good spot here. So what else would you want people to know, like either about Anchor or
the
about
main thing they should keep in
area?
mind that Anchor Steam is really a delicious beer.
I'm almost done with mine.
Yeah, and it's a delicious beer, and they should drink it.
Keep it. No.
and the other one that we make is that all of them are good, but Liberty Ale. It started the whole IPA trend, and it's a delicious beer. So
that really was the first IPA made in America, right?
Yeah, correct.
It's too bad they didn't say that on the
label. No, Fritz wanted to call it a pale ale, but there was enough BUs and the bittering units in there to make it an IPA, and we were really criticized at the time to making an ale that was undrinkable, But now people's tastes have really changed, and now they say Liberty Ale is too mild.
What's the most exciting in the newer beers and beer styles that you what are you liking in newer beer styles?
Well, and I like the lower alcohol ones.
Like the sessions.
Yeah, because, I always drank quantity. My elbow always went at a certain rate. And when they started raising the alcohol in the beer, you just get too drunk. So I like the English bitters that they're lower in alcohol, and and you have a big 20-ounce pint.
And the milds. Yeah.
So you have and the milds. So you can have a few pints and still be able to walk home. You'll have a good buzz going, but you'll be able to walk home.
Mare Island Brewing is actually doing a mild and a brown ale.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, I'm taking my dad there when he comes out there because I was born out there. But
nobody. Oh, you were born on the island?
Yeah.
Cool.
So nobody is.
Is the building still there?
I don't know. I've been afraid to go out there, but I'm going to go take him out to the brewery and explore a little bit. I know they're doing houses and things out there, and it's kind of an up and coming, exciting kind of thing over there. But they really embrace history and beer styles. So maybe you can pop over there with me one day.
Yeah. Do they sell it in Petaluma? Do you think?
I'm sure they do.
What's the name of the brewery?
Mare Island. Mare Island Brewing.
Yeah. I'll have to look for it.
Yeah, no, I'll bring you some.
Quite honestly, these days I drink so much less beer than I used to. I mean, I used to drink 3 beers on the way home from work. And now there's many a day I have no beers. It's funny how it's changed.
Yeah.
I went to Anchor because I wanted to get free beer. And it worked.
It worked for a long time. And you're part of history now. Maybe you can help me get Fritz on here one day.
Oh boy. Yeah, you keep asking me that, but that's a tough one.
I think it would be cool just for history once again.
Well, we could try.
Yeah, there's an old
because he's the man. He's the one who deserves all the credit.
There's just so much there, and when the Smithsonian started the beer history part of the museum, the American History Museum, and I got to be there for when. Fritz was being inducted, Michael Lewis, UC Davis. Who else was there? Ken Grossman. There was no women, though, which was a bummer. Jack McAuliffe. And who else am I forgetting? There was someone else. But anyway, there was all those first ones. And they have one of your white coveralls, for Anchor coveralls in the American History Museum at Smithsonian. And also there's a grain bill thing, like with your signature, like you'd accepted some malt or something. And then there's just pictures and things, and it's so cool. Yeah. Yeah. So, Anchor is so historical. It's in the Smithsonian. So we can't let that go away. So I encourage you guys, our friends out there to keep drinking Anchor, keep looking for it, ask your restaurants for it, because we can't let that history go away. I was on a trip when you did that, and I can tell you where because I could look through my pictures and see when it showed up compared to the others around it. I was pretty excited. Tara and I were both excited. We were like, boing, 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 boing. Yeah. Yeah. So, well, thank you for coming down. Hopefully we'll come in with Colin and Bob Brewer. He's in Idaho. He's kind of sad right now. So why? Good. Yeah, because he sold a lot. So we're gonna we'll get him in. So we'll have a few different people. So be on the lookout because we'll be talking about travel, beer, history, spirits, and to the people who care about them. Very good. Right on. Cheers. The Beatles cups here.
Welcome to the Live Explore podcast. If you like what you hear, please hit like and subscribe.